Hey everyone. So in this explainer, we're going to tackle a genuinely fascinating and honestly a kind of haunting question. When you look at the absolute peak of human success, the massive wealth, the global influence, the lasting legacy, is it truly worth the ultimate sacrifice? Think about the people sitting at the very top of the pyramid. We literally spend our whole lives striving to be just like them, right? But what if that finish line isn't exactly what it seems? Well, let's take a look.
Okay, let's dive into this. Consider the truly shocking deathbed realization of none other than Steve Jobs. Now, this was a man who literally sat at the absolute pinnacle of global success. We're talking unbelievable wealth, massive media power, and unmatched influence. But in his final days, as he looked back on his life surrounded by his family, he faced a pretty brutal truth. He realized that all that relentless focus on work, all the achievements, all the incredible companies he built, they simply weren't worth the price he paid. He deeply regretted the hours he could have spent with his kids, the minutes he could have shared with his wife, and the friendships that completely faded away just because he was too busy chasing success. It really makes you wonder, right? If someone with that level of achievement felt this way at the very end, what exact race are the rest of us running?
All right, moving into part one, the biology of our distraction. Why exactly are we wired this way? Why do we live our entire lives essentially in a routine coma, just running after these made-up societal metrics? We wake up, completely exhaust ourselves chasing arbitrary milestones, collapse into bed with zero energy left, and then just repeat the whole shebang all over again. Well, it basically comes down to biology. Now, what's really interesting about this is how it breaks down our behavior. Over millions of years, our brains developed in layers. We have this ancient lizard brain, the primitive part that's designed purely to keep us alive. It's totally driven by fear, survival, and this desperate need to belong to a tribe so we, don't get eaten. Then we have the neocortex, which is the newer layer responsible for higher logic, deep awareness, and big-picture thinking. The major problem here? Modern corporate consumerism actively hijacks that ancient fear-based lizard brain. Today, you aren't running from lions. You're terrified of not being unique, or not getting hired, or maybe failing to own the right car. Society exploits these primitive survival instincts, basically forcing us into a constant, exhausting loop of chasing status just so we can feel safe.
So what does this all mean? It brings us to the ultimate question. Why do we wait until our deathbed to realize our mistakes? Why doesn't this crystal clear clarity hit us halfway through the race? Well, because in the middle of the race, you're just too busy running. You don't even know if you're winning or losing or if you're even on the right track. It's only at the very end, when the physical body weakens and gets completely exhausted, that those loud, survival-driven instincts of the lizard brain finally quiet down. The fear of not having enough just fades away, and what you're left with is ultimate, absolute clarity. Which brings us to part 2, Bronnie Ware's Room of Truth, Confessions from the Finish Line.
Let me introduce you to someone who witnessed this clarity firsthand, Bronnie Ware. As a palliative care nurse, she literally sat with patients in their final weeks of life. For years, she listened to the incredibly honest, completely filterless confessions of dying patients as they prepared to take their last breaths. And as she listened to them, people who came from entirely different backgrounds, totally different nationalities and environments, she noticed something staggering. They all had the exact same regrets. In 2009, she documented these repetitive patterns into an article titled Regrets of the Dying. It spread like wildfire across the globe and later became a huge best-selling book. It basically proved that underneath all our modern programming, human beings share the exact same deep-seated remorse when they finally reach the finish line.
Let's get right into part 3, the 5 regrets of dying. These are vital lessons from those who actually know. I want you to think of these regrets as a literal cheat sheet handed back to you from people who have already crossed the finish line just so you can avoid making the exact same mistakes. Okay, regret number 1. I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. This is, hands down, the most common regret of all. We are intensely social creatures, completely programmed to seek the approval of our tribe, our parents, our peers, our society. We learn very early on what behaviors earn us love and acceptance, and we immediately start suppressing the parts of ourselves that just don't fit into that neat little mold. To really understand this, take a look at Grace's story. Grace lived a highly respectable, entirely expected life. She was married, stable, incredibly secure. But deep down, her absolute true passion was to travel the world and be a writer. But those dreams didn't fit the safe societal image expected of her, so she just buried them. On her deathbed, Grace wasn't just sad, she was deeply, fiercely angry with herself. She realized she totally lacked the courage to break social norms. She essentially lived a lie for decades, completely sacrificing her authentic self on the altar of societal expectations. Let's move to and see how this builds directly into regret number 2. I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Today, we're constantly taught to tie our entire human value to our daily productivity. If you aren't working, achieving, and constantly climbing that ladder, society pretty much tells you you're failing. So we give up our finite hours, time we can literally never buy back, just to hit the very next arbitrary milestone.
This perfectly brings us to John's heartbreaking story. John just wanted to provide a genuinely great life for his family, so he worked endless overtime, practically living at his office. His wife, Margaret, would often beg him to slow down, to just spend some time at home. But John was caught up in what psychologists call deferred living. He kept telling her, once I retire, we'll travel, we'll be happy. Eventually, John did retire, and he had plenty of money. But before they could take a single trip together, Margaret fell ill and passed away. John was left entirely alone, in a big house with his wealth, stuck with the crushing realization that he had completely traded his life away for a future that never actually arrived.
And this brilliantly illustrates the massive disconnect we all face. Notice the gap here. Society actively rewards status, money, and constant overwork. But look at what our biology and our hearts actually crave: free time, deep human connection, and physical health. The real, literal cost of endless productivity is your health, your relationships, and ultimately, your peace of mind.
Moving on to regret number 3. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. We're so frequently taught that suppressing our emotions is somehow a good thing. We keep the peace, we don't want to be a burden. We certainly don't want to face judgment or rejection, so we just slap on a mask. But keeping the peace at the cost of your own truth, it simply makes you invisible.
Just consider Joseph's unspoken tragedy. Joseph had a really difficult past, filled with a lot of pain, but he never shared it with anyone, not even the people closest to him. He genuinely thought he was protecting them by hiding his trauma. But as he lay dying, he was hit with a truly devastating truth. No one ever truly knew who he was. Think about that. If you never show people your true feelings, your weaknesses, or your fears, they can only love the mask you wear. They never get to love the real you.
Regret number 4. I wish I'd stayed in touch with my friends. Friendships are uniquely profound because, unlike family, they have zero formal obligations. You actively choose your friends. But because there isn't that formal tie, friendship requires deliberate, ongoing effort. As life gets crazy busy with work, marriage, moving to new cities, it is tragically easy to just let these vital connections slip right through our fingers.
Emily experienced this exact regret. She and her childhood friend, Sarah, were incredibly close growing up. But as they got older, Emily got married, moved to a totally different city, and started her own family. Slowly but surely, that geographical distance transformed into this massive, permanent emotional void. On her deathbed, Emily realized way too late that she'd let a pure, totally vital connection fade away completely, simply because she got caught up in the daily busyness of life.
And finally, we have regret number 5. Now, this one challenges everything we assume about comfort and joy. I wish that I had let myself be happier. So, the crucial point is this. Happiness is an active choice that requires immense vulnerability. A lot of people stay completely stuck in familiar routines, even totally miserable ones, simply because change is terrifying. We feel this strange guilt about stepping out of our comfort zones. We actually prefer the safety of predictable unhappiness over the frightening, unknown risks required to seek out genuine joy. But here's the truth. True happiness demands that you risk failure. It demands that you risk getting hurt. Pain is just an inescapable part of joy.
All right, part 4, reclaiming your real life now. Let's wake up before the finish line, shall we?
Listen, if you constantly feel like you just aren't doing enough or achieving enough, I want you to know right now that this isn't a personal failure. You are living inside an economic system that is precisely designed to exploit your ancient biological fears of not being enough. It thrives on keeping you in a coma of endless consumption and overwork. But you absolutely do not have to wait until your body fails to finally wake up. The finish line is going to arrive for all of us, and trust me, it comes much faster than we think. So ask yourself today, right now, who do you need to call, and what mask do you need to drop? Take a second to connect with someone you actually love. Embrace the completely beautiful mess of your authentic self, and take back your time. Because ultimately, if the absolute peak of success means dying as a total stranger to yourself and the people you love, is it really success at all?